Welcome back, everyone. Today, I'm joined by Sally Prosser. I got that right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. From the land down under, flown all the way over here. We appreciate that, but it wasn't just for us. You were doing your own event. What was that event called?
The event was called Speak Up for Your Business.
And that ties into your career, what you do every day, which is a public speaking coach and holistic coach as well.
Yeah.
And it's quite a niche. Well, I say niche. It's quite a select path to go down, as it were. So what kind of got you into the public speaking space?
Yeah, well, Ollie, it's really great to be here. And even though I might not be here, especially for this, it's incredible we were able to work this out being here. So thank you.
No worries.
So I am one of those perhaps unusual people that was born like microphone first. I've just enjoyed speaking my whole life. One of my very first Christmases, I was like, please, Santa, can I have a microphone on a stand? And I got this little microphone and gave a little thank you speech. So I feel like it's always been in my blood, love the public speaking and debating competitions, and then went into being a radio news reporter and then into being a television news reporter and a company spokesperson. So throughout my life, I've done a lot of work that was around voice and talking and expression.
Yeah.
And ever since I set up my speech and drama studio, actually at the age of 16, in the front room of my parents' house, so they had this garage at the front, and then, I'd kick Dad out and of an afternoon, I had to see students. I've always loved, sharing that gift with others, because if you're able to use your voice to express who you are and what you want and the ideas that you have, it's just such an important part of life. I recently read this book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Have you read that book?
No. Who's it by? Do you know who it's by?
Yeah, it's by Bronnie Ware, who's actually from Queensland, which is the same state I'm from. And it's this fascinating book where they talk. She was a palliative care nurse, and so she worked with lots of people in their final days, and she asked them what their regrets were. And the top regret was, I wish I'd lived a life true to me, not what other people expected of me. So that's probably not much of a surprise. Number 2 was, I wish I hadn't worked so much.
Yeah.
I think we can relate to that one too. And the third one, the third top regret of the dying was, I wish I'd had the courage to express myself. They just felt like through their life they hadn't said what they wanted to say or used their voice in the way they wanted to. And so even though on the surface a lot of people come to me going, oh my God, Sal, I've got a work presentation, or I need to do an Instagram video, or I've been asked to be on a podcast that I'm having kittens and I don't know what to do. At a deeper level, I feel like, well, I know my work is helping people be able to live their life, expressing their true feelings, having the courage to do that. And so hopefully everybody who has worked with me will not be on their deathbed with that as one of their regrets.
Yeah, there's so much power. A lot of people don't realize how much power you have in articulating yourself well to others. Because I think a lot of this day and age, a lot of people are misunderstood, and their ideas are misunderstood for what they're actually trying to get across. And you're very well spoken, you're very well articulative, like you get your point across and you can understand it. Was that always the case? So you started off with radio, then TV. Was it like a big learning curve, or did you kind of like hit the ground running like quite naturally?
It's still a learning curve. It's still a learning curve. And I feel like this is one of the things that holds people back, is feeling like it has to be right before they start. One of my favorite quotes is, don't wait to be ready to take action to be ready.
Yeah.
And so people might say, well, Sal, your whole life you've done so much speaking. You're on the radio and you're on TV and you speak at events and you go on podcasts and all of this. Every single time I'm speaking, I am learning something new, trialing something, thinking, oh God, I shouldn't have said that way. And trusting that you just say what needs to be said in that moment.
Yeah.
Have a bit of a reflection and think, maybe I could have done it next time a bit better. Learning, of course, the different skills. Like there's lots of different frameworks that you can work with as well. There's breathing techniques, and I'm sure we can talk about some of those things today. So there's lots of things that you can do.
Yeah.
But I'd say if, you take nothing else away, it's to know that it's never going to be perfect. Speaking isn't a perfect thing. It's like, just because you're not an Olympic walker, do you not walk out your front door? Like you walk.
Yeah. Have you ever had that sort of the fear or anxiety before giving a speech or anything like that? Because that's what you coach is people that come to you and they're like, I'm really anxious about giving this presentation, or I don't know how I'm going to stand up and speak to 100 people. Have you ever like experienced that sort of firsthand, like multiple times?
Many times, many times. Like once when I was reading live on radio, like live radio is pretty terrifying. I remember that my computer kind of froze and I didn't have the words printed out, and I just absolutely panicked and went completely silent. And then I don't think I've ever told anyone this, but I sort of started mouthing words with no sign. So the guy in the studio thought there was a technical problem and just went to ads. Because I just had this moment where I just had lost my breath and lost my words, and then I got it back together. Similarly, going live for TV, another terrifying experience where they're asking you questions and sort of saying, can you talk for 2 minutes? Generally, I'd been somebody that can talk underwater, I'd be like, okay, great. What, only 5 minutes? I want to talk for 5 hours. And for some reason, I shouldn't say for some reason, my breath got short, I tensed up and lost where I was. And they pretty much, again, had to throw back to the studio. And what I've learned throughout this time is to be very accepting and loving of whatever's going on in your body and not judging it.
Yeah.
So say the sensation's always physical. The pounding heart, the sweaty palms. Do you get something that happens?
Yeah. Like you kind of like the anxiety is coming out.
Yeah, but so here's the interesting thing. So people say, oh, I get really anxious, but what's actually happening in the body?
I would get it where you would get like flashes of just blank in your mind and you're like, oh, right, okay, where was I? And then again, you get like the sweaty palms and it's like you're lining up to like jump off a cliff almost. Like you're getting ready and it's coming and you're like, oh no. But that's what I used to be like the very start of the podcasting, because like speaking to anyone outside of my friend group, that was like, I was like, whoa, what is going on here?
And Ollie, look at it now.
I know. We have come along a little way, and we've got a long way to go, but that's the beauty of the journey.
It is. Oh, that's so great. And so I work with this framework, which I call BBB. And this is really the foundation of, I sort of call it the no butterflies blueprint. The no butterflies blueprint. And part of it is, it's not about getting rid of butterflies. It's just about getting them flying in formation, right? It's using that energy. And the first bit is that belief. It's that speaking story. It's that inner voice of what we tell ourselves. And so if you have that pounding heart, do you go, oh my gosh, that means I'm really nervous. That means I'm unprepared. That means no one wants to listen to me. Or is it, that means my heart's cheering for me and I'm ready to go?
Yeah.
The sweaty palms, that means, I don't know, there's some impending doom, like it's going to be bad, rather than what I do is, oh, well, that means I, live in a hot place and need a towel. Like, it's sort of detaching what's going on in the body with the belief. But of course, we all have our story that we bring to the moment. We're a product of all of our, experiences.
Yeah.
And so it's thinking about, what is that speaking story that you have? What is your identity? Is it that you're someone that's never been any good? Because if you say that, then you need to move past that.
It's kind of like the fight or flight almost. Like you're either going to smash through it or you're going to shut down and it's all going to crumble around you. We have it really in working on trees when we have a dangerous situation and, one wrong move you're going to be badly injured or worst case, like die. And you get it and you're sweating and, you're like, oh shit, what am I doing? Why am I here? And you have the people which are like, right now I'm going to get down out of the tree. And you have people like myself or people like really good in the industry who will come up and like, right, we just got to do it. Like, this is the way it's going to go. And you just overcome all of those emotions because that needs to be done. So it's kind of similar. Well, I don't know in your experience if that's like a similar case, but that's how I would view it. Like when I speak on the podcast. That's how I feel. I'm just like, I just got to do it, because the more I do it, the less it's going to affect me.
Yeah, and it's also asking the question, what is the outcome of not speaking? What's at risk if you're not putting yourself out there? So if I work with some corporates and they have to do presentations, they're like, oh, it's really boring and I really hate it. And I say, if you really, really don't like the content and you've got no interest in speaking about the thing you're speaking about, then that's the problem right there.
Yeah.
But if you get to the core of, this is why I want to speak, why do you want to communicate in that way? And why is speaking the best way? Because it's just one way of communication. You could do a flyer, you could do an email, you could do an artwork, you could do a photo. A lot of the time using your voice is the most effective way to get your message across. So it's having that belief that, yes, I do have something valuable to say. I talk about your BS, right? We have a lot of our own BS that sabotages us from doing things that we want to do. So instead, you have your belief statement, your BS. And what is that belief statement that you run as your soundtrack?
Yeah.
That inner, I call it radio hype. In our mind, we've got radio hate. You can't do this. You're no good. You're terrible. Or radio hype, which is like your best friend. You've got this. You can do this. And so tuning into that radio hype.
Yeah.
And saying, people do want to listen to what I have to say. This is important.
Yeah. Again, it comes down to the self-sabotage. Like, I'm not good enough to do this. Who wants to hear my story? Like, my story will never help anyone. And when we're speaking downstairs, someone's story, like right next to you, may completely change the way you think about whatever you're going through in life. And you've just come from, right, I may get this wrong, how to pronounce it. Is it Vipassana?
Vipassana.
Yeah. So it was a 10-day meditation retreat. Was that right?
Oh, I would not use the word retreat in any kind of same paragraph as this experience. It was sort of like a meditation boot camp. So Vipassana meditation course, it was 10 days, and I knew I'd find it challenging because you got 10 days, it's no speaking, no reading, no writing, no dinner, and just a 4 a.m. alarm and pretty much 11 hours of meditation every day. We learn this technique. And like you're the second person I've seen pretty much since this whole experience. And I struggled so much. It was so hard. It was so much harder than I thought it was going to be.
When did you kind of, like the struggle hit you almost? Was it sort of like straight away, like when you got there, like, this is going to suck? Or was it sort of as you got into it?
Well, they say, expectation is the source of all disappointment. And if we have no expectations, we can't be disappointed. So I think what had happened is I thought, I'm going to be fine for the first couple of days, and then it will get hard. But we had not even reached day one. It was the night before when they sort of said, all right, now we're going to the meditation hall. And then they divided the doors between the men and the women. And next thing we're in the hall and that's it. we're like into it. And so I think from that very first moment, I was like, oh my God. And this is why it's good I did it in the UK. If I had have done it in Australia, I would have called my boyfriend on day 2 and just said, come and pick me up, because it was so hard. But I literally had nowhere, I shouldn't say literally had nowhere to go. It was the logistics of leaving outweighed the difficulties of staying. And
because it wasn't like it was kind of in the middle of nowhere, was that right?
Yeah.
Like you're taken to the woods and just put in somewhere.
Yeah, but I had a lot of lessons, and one of the lessons was around perspective. There were days when, it was actually pouring rain and I was standing in this little area that we had, with just the rain falling, and I did not blink and I'm not moving for like 25 minutes. I'm thinking if someone came along, I'd look like an art installation, woman in rain. People just like staring at me. And I felt so sad. I was at such a low point. And I had to just tell myself to get a grip, I was physically safe. I was showered and fed, and there's so many more difficult situations that people are facing every day, and there's many more difficult situations that I've faced in my life as well. You know, if I have to look at my life and say what were the top 5 worst days of my life, I actually wouldn't put any of the last week into that, even though at the time I thought it was so terrible. And, you know, perspective is a good thing to think about with public speaking as well. We tend to make this podcast or this presentation or this post this big thing, and we build up all of this, like make that mountain out of the molehill.
Yeah.
When really it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Like at the end of your life, are you going to be thinking about that one presentation? I used to work in public relations for water and sewerage. So, you know, there'd be burst water mains and I'd be like, oh no, the media's on the scene. I've got to go down, put my hard hat on and, you know, do the interviews about what was going on. And I'd be like, oh my gosh. And I'd call my mum and tell her about this stressful day where we had a burst water main and it ruined half the traffic and we were on the news, and she'd say, oh, honey, it's PR, not ER.
I like that.
It's PR, not ER. No one died. And I thought it's so true as well. So with your presentations or whatever it is, thinking it's really not that big a deal. And it's not to devalue it. It's just to take that importance, that weight that it becomes
Yeah.
out of your mind.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main causes of procrastination, like putting it off. You think it's going to be terrible, putting it off, and then the problem gets bigger and bigger, and then you just do it, and it takes about 5 minutes. Like, wait a minute, that was really easy. Like, I could have done this 2 months ago. And I think that's where, again, a lot of people procrastinate because they think something's going to be a lot worse than what it actually is. And with the people, like the clients that come to you, do you find they sort of procrastinate a lot, or what are their main sort of issues that you solve for them?
So I don't get any middle of the night phone calls. So when I was in PR, it'd be like middle of the night, we've had this pipe burst. But I do get a lot of public speaking emergencies in the sense that people ring and go, oh God, I've agreed to do this thing. Or I've been asked by my boss to go and present at this conference, or you know, they're running a business and it's going quite well and they've been asked to speak on a panel at an event. Oh my gosh, I'm having a panic, and I was talking to my friend and she's like, just call Sally. So here I am, I'm calling you. And, you know, so I say, calm down, it's okay. And I help them with the mindset around speaking, and also the crafting of it. So our voice is like a musical instrument. And so learning how to use it, a lot of us don't, many people don't learn how to use it, the proper way of breathing, where the vibrations sit, articulation. You know, like even before the podcast, we could have done like a voice warm-up.
Yeah.
Like it's actually really helpful before you speak. And then there's the content. Okay, well, what are we going to say? What are some ways that we can frame the questions, or can we write the content? Actually, today I've got a client in Australia, probably not right now because it's the middle of the night, but I think it's tomorrow. She is head of a company and she's opening up a big conference in front of, you know, 200 very important people in the industry. And she was really nervous even about walking on stage. You know, what was she going to say? How was she going to say it? So we went through all that and touched base with her yesterday. She's all good to go. So I'm keen to hear how that goes. And then the other main problem is around, if they haven't got that public speaking emergency, it's more, I have this message I want to share and I'm being held back from getting it out there and making the change I want to make because of this fear.
Yeah.
You know,
so what would you say to someone in kind of like that category who is wanting to put a message out there, but they don't really know like how or where to start?
I would actually say social media. Start on social media.
Yeah.
Start doing Instagram stories. It's not about being on all of them. Instagram stories is good because it disappears after 24 hours. So it's a good way to practice getting on camera. If that's even too much, just set your phone up and make some videos without even posting them. Get in the habit of talking.
Yeah.
Get in the habit of speaking. I believe clarity comes through action. So you mentioned the word paralyzed before, and so a lot of my business clients, they're sort of paralyzed going, well, I want to put things out on LinkedIn or on Instagram, or I want to start a podcast, but I don't know exactly what to say, so they don't do anything. When I first started my TikTok at the end of 2019, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I was just like, oh, this is an app that no one really looks at. And I just made these terrible TikToks and like, it was really terrible content. The reason that I was able to learn how to use the platform so well was because I just started playing around with it.
Yeah.
And the reason that I am able to express myself quite well in some ways now is just because I've been doing it for so many years.
Again, it's just kind of like a toddler. They just like do something to see what happens and they learn from it. And then they're like, oh, do you know what? That works. That didn't work. And it's kind of like keeping that like childlike mindset, like of always learning, which a lot of people that, you know, I want to grow up and like be an adult and like rah, 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 and just not have the joy of learning anymore. And I think you just got to keep that mindset.
Yeah, and I love that you spoke about joy because a lot of people have a very negative story about speaking. It's like, oh my God, I got told off by that teacher. She said I was, you know, too fast or too boring or said the wrong thing or the class wasn't watching, and it's like, oh God, this is just a bad thing. Or on social media, they're worried about, oh, what's mum's friend Jenny going to say, or what's so-and-so going to think? What will they say? And I mean, it is a real thing. This is the thing I love about public speaking is because no one's afraid of speaking itself. A fear of public speaking is called glossophobia, which is like the Greek glosso is tongue. So it's like the fear of the tongue. It's kind of cool. But I would say no one is afraid of speaking itself unless you are somebody who can't verbalize because of trauma, like you can't talk to anybody at any time. That's not the majority of people. The majority of people talk to their friends, their family. They're not afraid of the speaking. What happens is when they're in a particular scenario, potentially putting something out in public, a lot of existing fears and insecurities arise, and that's the vulnerability point where it pops out. So for a lot of my corporate clients, they're very burnt out, for example. So one client said, oh my gosh, I'm so terrified of speaking. But the more we explored it, she was actually just being pulled from pillar to post and really, really stressed with her job and everything going on. And it was bubbling away. And then the speaking was just where it was all coming out. It might be those stories around another client of mine discovered that her older sister, her whole life, always spoke for her. She was the little sister. And she just said from a young age, she just felt like her sister was the spokesperson for both of them. She was like, I never said anything. I always defaulted to her. And so when we explored and worked through that story, it was revealed that, yeah, it's actually okay for her to have her own voice. She doesn't need her sister or someone else.
Yeah, so it's
speaking for her.
It's kind of good that you touched on that, like the fear almost it comes from something that's happened in the past.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was at school, you used to get like the school play, to get kicked on the stage. Right, you're singing, you're saying something, and you'll just be there like, oh no, oh no. And for me, I hated that. I hated that so much. That was like a genuine fear of anything to do with that. I could do like. I could do actions in front of people. That was fine. But speaking or singing, like, no. So when I was, I can't remember how old I was now. I must have been about 8, maybe. I don't know if you had this in Australia, the Cadbury's advert with the gorilla playing the drums. Yeah. So I dressed up as a gorilla.
With the Phil Collins song.
Yeah. So I dressed up as a gorilla and played Phil Collins in the air tonight because I was a drummer. And that was my thing. Like, I could do that. That was fine. Yeah. But give me a microphone and I would just shut down. So yeah, for me, it's weird. Like I can act out things like in front of like groups of people, audiences. That's fine. It's just when it comes to speaking from that early age of just being like kicked on a stage, like, sing. I'm like, I can't sing. I don't want to sing, but then you're made to. And it's kind of like the story of, Les Brown. So he was kind of in a similar one, wasn't he? Where he was, you're doing this and I don't want to do it. And then next time you're doing this. And now he's like probably the biggest motivational speaker in the world. And it all stems from that young, like childhood, like in school speaking, which a lot of people, again, it like blocks up their future when it comes to speaking again.
It does, and I feel like there's so much value in making mistakes. I feel like one of the reasons I'm not afraid of speaking so much now is because most of the bad things that people are worried about happening have happened to me. You know, like I froze up live on radio. In one of my first radio gigs in the morning, I used to read the news at 5:30 a.m. because it was like the only time slot they would allow me to do in the beginning because I was so new. And you had to say the weather at the start of the bulletin. And so I'm there going, good morning, it's 5:30. I'm Sally Prosser. First to weather, a sign and mostly funny day ahead. And, you know, went on. And I'm like, oh, God, sorry, you know, I meant fine and mostly sunny. And even though it was just a small faux pas at the time, you're like, oh, my God, it's so terrible. And it's like the time, you know, I understand in the UK, the tip is free. Is that right? People can just take things there.
Depending on what it is, I think you got to pay now. I think for certain things you got to pay.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So like in Australia, you have to pay.
Okay.
But I didn't read the press release properly, and one day I accidentally told the good people of Wollongong, south of Sydney, that the dump was free for the day. And I got this call from the flustered council worker going, love, are you telling people the tip's free? I'm like, oh my gosh. He goes, we've got a traffic jam like all the way down the road. It's blocking up the highway. Now, my first response was, oh my gosh, I can't believe so many people are tuned into 96.5 Wave FM. And then I had to issue this kind of apology. And even my boss at the time, I was fortunate. He said, well, you know, you're not going to make that mistake again. And even the council worker was like, don't worry, love. Most people thought it was too good to be true. Then in, you know, TV, I've played the same story twice in a row. I've had wardrobe malfunctions. I've had buttons come undone. I've tripped going up the stage. I've gone viral for all the wrong reasons on TikTok. I mean, who would have thought pronunciation was such a triggering point? But I had this video during COVID that went viral. It was about pronunciation. I'm a speaking coach. It's something that I help young reporters with, especially. You know, they're on the news. They want to say something the right way. Anyway, pronunciation is not a hill I want to die on. I learned this after this whole experience. Anyway, so I had this video and people were stitching it. You know, you can stitch it on TikTok, saying, this is the world's most condescending woman. Don't listen to her. She's telling you not to be confident. And one guy made a video with the poo emoji on my head. I used to work for a sewerage company, so that was like quite appropriate. But then all these people, oh, I never got a good feeling from this woman, and oh yeah, I've never liked her vibe, and yeah, how dare she tell people not to be confident and all of this. And it was really cutting to the quick, because not only was it criticism, it was criticism that was directly in contravention, which is my mission and my whole reason for doing what I do, which is to help people feel more confident in their voice and be able to express themselves. So this video's running away, all these horrible messages are coming in, and so I'm on the couch in my therapist's office, like crying, being like, oh God, why does everybody hate me? Oh. And she gave me some really good advice. She said, Sal, you got to live life in your disco ball. Live life in your disco ball every day. You keep on shining, you keep on dancing, you decide who comes to your party and who is a reflection right back on them. And that experience and that concept has helped me so, so much. So a big blocker for people is the fear of judgment.
Yeah.
What if people don't like it? What if I get negative comments? I've had both of those things, and the only thing that's happened is it's blown up my business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've had freedom to be able to express even more.
Yeah. Like I say, like even if it was like a negative experience as it were, like you've still hit that virality, and your message reached a lot of people. I'm assuming not all of those comments were bad. Like you did have a healthy proportion of like people who were like, oh yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah,
and the interesting thing with videos, I've had a fair few go viral over the years, and people are nicer when it's a smaller video. The more viral something goes, the meaner people are. It's like the bigger it gets, they feel this ability to be able to criticize. So.
Yeah, I heard something. I can't remember who said it now. It was kind of like, if a video doesn't go viral and it's like, you know, like relatively low on views, it's kind of like in your circles, you're never really going to get the haters, as it were. But once you hit that virality, like you're just going to get all the random people just coming in because, you know, it's against what they think or something like that. And it's not bad, like, to challenge someone on their views, and you can learn so much from it as well. My girlfriend's gone viral quite a few times on TikTok, and she's had some very constructive criticism, should I say. But she's learned from some things, and she's like, you know what, I'm just not going to post about that anymore, because I think it's just better off if we don't do that.
Yeah, oh, I have to follow her. I mean, and it's so helpful as well. And it's not just painting every single negative comment as a hater. There are some haters and trolls who will say things like, shut up, no one wants to listen to you. I've had go pick the kids up from school. Just suck it up. You've been in menopause since the Roman Empire. That was one of the comments I got. I was like, yes, a great opportunity to talk about periods. But anyway, but a lot of the comments, as you say, are just like constructive criticism. It's absolutely great and fine for people to disagree and to be able to reflect and think, okay, maybe I can learn something out of this and do something differently. So like with that particular video, it helped me because I was like, well, I don't want to be a speech and drama kind of elocution teacher telling people about pronunciation of words. It's like not what I want my legacy to be.
Yeah.
It's not important. And actually it's the mistakes that are the impurities. I shouldn't say impurities because that's like suggesting that there's a pure way and an impure way, but like a mispronunciation is fine.
Yeah. Everyone does it.
Yeah. And it's like, what even is the correct pronunciation anyway? Like I feel like it's being that stickler is potentially another barrier, and that's something I worked through as well. I was such a perfectionist, so not like you didn't like being pushed on stage. I was somebody who was in tears if I didn't get cast as the main performer, in the school production. I went to an all-girls school. My crowning moment was being Romeo in Romeo and Juliet. So that was hilarious. They had to like stick facial hair and everything on me. And I'm like quite large, busted. So they had to like bind me down because I was playing the guy. Anyway, I would go in speech and drama at Stedfords. It was part of what I did. And I practiced the poem and the piece and I'd do my pausing and everything. And I'd walk out and you'd stand on this little cross on the stage and like you'd turn and then you'd start. And one year, at this one at Stedford, I did a rendition of a poem. Judith Wright, an Australian poet. And I got first place. And I was absolutely distraught. Like, it was crazy, right? So I got first place. I was distraught. I cried the whole way in the car on the way home. And my mum, my poor mum, she was like, Sal, like, what's going on here? She could understand if I was upset because I didn't get first or whatever. And I said, oh, I didn't take a long enough pause in line 5. What a painful child to have, And I'm just thinking this is, like, at the time I didn't think this, but looking back, that perfectionism and that inability to celebrate is just going to be something that holds you back.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I was raised with my dad especially, he's very much a perfectionist. Like everything has, like, all his work was, it has to be perfect. So whatever I did would never be perfect. So it would always be, I need to improve. So I could never take in something I've done as like, oh, I did this. Not until later on in life, not until the last couple of years, really.
Oh, and it's so great because it's such a common story, isn't it?
And I still, to this day, struggle with taking a compliment because I don't believe it's real. And that stemmed from, growing up. And the being raised in the sort of environment of it's got to be perfect, especially when you're a kid. No child is perfect. We are like little chaos things. We just run around, do things, and it's just wild. There's no structure to it. It's just wild. So going through like my whole sort of school and college, like chasing perfection, which I probably like would never achieve. It does stuff to you, like your confidence and everything. So it is, yeah, definitely a big one with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this whole also concept of being like ahead or behind, and we feel like we're in this race and things need to be a certain standard. It can be very, very unhelpful.
Yeah.
I like to think of this concept of you are always on the middle step and no one is on your step. So you're always on the middle step. There's always people that have done more than you and who've done less than you in any particular field or anything really. But at the same time, no one is on your step.
Yeah.
So it's like no point kind of comparing or beating yourself up about things.
Yeah.
And I did compliment your beautiful hair before and you were like, thank you. So,
I know. I'm just used to sort of like just brushing it off a little bit, as it were. So
yeah,
like,
but then someone's like, it's like a present if you can't accept a compliment. Like, same in Australia, we're all very self-deprecating. It's like, oh, you look lovely. Oh, downplay. But it's like a present. And if you don't accept the present, it's like saying, getting it and tossing it out the window or something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's it. That is it. But I say it takes a long time, and there's a lot of like people who have probably gone through something similar to that, of like that chasing perfection. And I do a lot of racing, so a lot of running, and earlier on, like in my first few races, people were passing you, and I was just like, oh, what the hell? Like, why am I so slow? And then you kind of like take yourself out of that and like, right, I'm just gonna work on me. It doesn't matter who passes me. And then you end up getting faster and faster, not by focusing on what other people are doing.
Yeah, but your own progress.
Yeah.
And that's so helpful. So when I was younger, I mentioned I did the speech and drama as Stedfords, which are essentially the opinion of somebody. It's the adjudicator who decides who's better or worse. And so it was a source of a lot of disappointment when I was a teenager. Why didn't I win? All this ridiculous stuff. And my dad would say, well, Sal, if you are so worried about the opinions of others, get in the pool, do your swimming, because it's you and the wall. It's you and the time. It doesn't matter if you came last, if you swam a personal best. That's a great race.
Yeah. Everything I do is you against you. Like every race is you against you. Like,
I'll tell you, being for 10 days in complete silence and complete isolation and being struggling so much, it really is you against you.
Yeah. In that 10 days, what would you say is the biggest thing you've learned, if anything, that you learned from that?
It's so fresh. I am still processing a lot of it. I'd say it's the reaffirming of how much communication and voice gives me life. It was like the opposite of all the things that light me up. Movement, speaking, communication. On the last day, we were allowed to speak at 10 a.m. on day 10. And as soon as I started speaking to people, I was like crying because I was like, oh my God, just like all the emotion of it. But I just started feeling so bright again, learning the stories and hearing people's voices.
Yeah.
So it was a good lesson in what it is that works for you, because there were many other people who loved it. They loved their experience. They loved meditating. And, it is so fresh. I might need a few more days for things to really integrate.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, I'm very clear on what sort of things I like to do.
Yeah.
And that's probably not one of them.
But at least you've like gone through that, and that's something you can say you've now done and you've gained an experience from.
Absolutely. 100%. Like it's last year I climbed a snow-covered mountain in just bike shorts and a crop top, like a Wim Hof experience, cold exposure.
Yeah.
And it was 90 minutes uphill in the snow in snowshoes with, -8 degrees at the top. And that was easier than what I did last week. Like that, the physical challenge was a lot easier. So I would just say no growth happens in the comfort zone and no comfort happens in the growth zone.
Yeah.
So just keep putting yourself out there. And like you're saying with the podcast, from the very first one you did to now, how different it is from your running, from the very first time you ran a distance to another. And it's the same with speaking. When it's something you're starting, of course it's going to be a challenge. I've spoken my whole entire life, and I remember coming out of lockdown and seeing people in person again and getting nervous about seeing a client in person just because it had been so long.
Yeah.
So it's
In Australia, did you like you obviously had the lockdown still? You couldn't see like anyone outside of like your household. Was that right?
Oh, look, in Queensland where I was, we were very fortunate. We had
Yeah.
a very short lockdown compared to
Okay.
Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah.
So
So with us, we were allowed to work still, so we could still go out and we could interact with people, which was good. I know a lot of people which really struggled, like being locked in their house, like no one to speak to, especially people that live alone. And it's kind of like doing what you did, but they're forced to do it, like not really speaking to anyone, like just living aimlessly around their house and can't go to work, so they got the furlough money. And yeah, that really did numbers on people's mental health.
yeah, absolutely. In Melbourne especially, which was the world's longest lockdown.
How long was it?
Oh, I'm going to say it was about 8-9 months. If you're in Victoria or Melbourne and watching this and I've got it incorrect, I know this sounds bad, but after a while I actually had to disconnect from it. Because it was just so horrible just seeing what was happening there. And there have been a lot of people moving north, and part of it's the weather. And I think also part of it is how traumatic it was for a city to be in that situation.
So was it sort of like no one allowed out, like everyone was in their house, like they weren't allowed
in the house, they were sort of had a very small radius to move in, and it was just the length of it.
I can't remember how long the one in England was. I think it was a couple of months.
And there were breaks here and there.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember. It was like 3 years ago now, which seems crazy.
Like, it's another great way to have perspective is to have this reframe. I call it entertain the opposites. So if you think speaking so bad, right, posting that video or speaking up at that meeting or doing that conference presentation is so awful, let's entertain the opposites and let's say you are not allowed to speak. You're in a role where you're not allowed to speak. Only your boss or your superiors can speak. You're not even invited to meetings, let alone asked to speak anywhere. You have been banned from podcasting. You haven't got a phone. You've got no social media accounts. And there are parts of the world right now where people are not allowed to express their voice on matters.
Yeah.
You know, like it's actually a matter of life and death if they were to publicly speak their truth.
Yeah.
You know, and so that can be really helpful to say, well, wow, if you're in a position, a privileged position where you have a voice physically and metaphorically and you have the tools, whether that be a podcast or a mobile phone or, you know, the opportunity at work to be able to use it, then God damn it, use it. So express what you want to express.
Yeah, 100%. And I think going back to what you were saying about, just start by making the Instagram stories. That's exactly how I started. I started with a reel. And I was in my business advisor group and they're like, just make one video of you on camera and then just start doing it. Let's introduce a few more. And my first one was terrible. I think I've re-recorded it maybe like 10 times. I did it and I was like, nah, I'll do another one. And then eventually, I don't think I was ever happy with it. I'm just gonna upload it. And everyone was like, yes, well done. I was like, all right, cool. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Right, we'll make another one. And then from then on, I make them every single day. And it's not, I don't think about it. It's just part of my life now. It's just you make the video and there's no pressure on it. It's just like talking to someone across from you. It's not that dreaded thing of when you're first getting into it, like making that first video. It does get a lot easier.
It definitely does get easier. And in saying that, sometimes I'm in the zone, I'll make a video, first take, one take wonder, happy days, put it out. Other days, I don't know, something comes over me and I can't seem to get the words out and I'm like recording, 20 times. I don't think, oh my gosh, I'm going backwards. What's going on? I'm a speaking coach who can't even film a video in one take. I think, oh, well, like it means nothing. It took 20 takes. Just
Yeah.
delete all those so it doesn't clog up the iPhone storage and then just post it.
It used to be, I tried this thing for a little while where I'd used to write my own poems and I'd recite them, like walking somewhere.
Yes.
And I've got quite a few of like where it just didn't go to plan. And I keep them as little bloopers and I watch them just to laugh. And it's great to look back on things and you're like, that was quite funny. But then look where you are now.
Yeah, and the people love honesty. People have a good BS radar. Yesterday, on the back of the Vipassana meditation, I made a video because, of course, I told everybody I'm going to be, I post all the time. So I'm like, I'm going to be offline for 10 days. Just don't worry. I'm going to do this thing, in my mind going, it's going to be great. So I sort of had to report back because, I got back and a lot of people have messaged me. So I did this video where I was trying to explain just a bit about it. And every time I just kept choking up. Like I was so emotional yesterday. I just could not stop crying. And so I kept drying my tears, starting the video. Drying my tears, it just didn't work. So I was like, I am just going to go with it. And if I get upset, I get upset. It's fine. And that story has had like almost 400 views. Partly because of that, maybe partly because I haven't posted in so long. So the algorithm's like, oh, she's back, And so many people have messaged me.
Yeah.
And said, I really liked that video. I really felt it was really truthful and honest, And I'd always say that there is such a thing as it being over-polished. If you over-polish something and make it too rehearsed, people don't connect with it.
Yeah. They connect with authenticity and sort of sometimes like raw emotion of like in the moment you've recorded something, and a lot of people connect with that a lot more than some like perfectly scripted movie piece.
Yeah, absolutely. In one of my first webinars that I did for my business, it was about warming up the body. So I was taking them through this exercise where you flop down like a rag doll and then you build yourself up vertebrae by vertebrae by. I was trying to say vertebrae by vertebrae. Could not say it. Like just kept stuffing it up again and again and again. And I'm thinking, oh my God, these 5 people that have joined this webinar, she's supposed to be a speaking coach. She can't even speak. That's it. I want my refund back. And in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, what a disaster. It's all going to be over. I'm going to lose my house. By the end of the day, I'm going to be on the street eating cat food out of a tin, catastrophizing. Anyway, people loved it. People were like, oh my gosh, Sally, finally, like, this is so good. We thought you were so, like, polished that it was almost pre-recorded.
Yeah.
I do sound a bit like a news reporter.
But it's that humanity that people connect with. So say you seem like, I don't know, like you can never make a mistake. So you get put up on this like stool and then you make a mistake and everyone's like, they're human just like me. And they connect. That's where the sort of connection happens is when you're sort of relating on the same level to someone, whether that be through a mistake, that's by accident. It's what gets people to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's doing the dance between, I call the divine inspiration and the blubbering idiot, right? So if you're always blubbering idiot, I know this is just a term, then people are going to be like, oh, well, they're very much like me, but I'm not going to really listen to what they say because they seem like just as big a mess as me. It's just, if it's only that. If it's only the divine inspiration, so you'd see these creators online where like everything's like, this is how you do this and this is how you do that and look at my amazing life and here's a tip for this and you just, they're so perfect.
Yeah.
Then you kind of think, oh, I can't really connect with that because they're just so far away from where I am. So it's about doing that dance between the two where you're showing that you are an authority in a space while showing you are relatable.
Yeah, this is why I love
well.
people that have come from somewhere through experience and that share their story, because you can see where they were, where they are now. So you can see that journey. So for anyone watching, that journey is achievable because, they've seen you do that journey. So that's what I love. And I think a lot more people should stand up and talk about the struggles they've overcome because it will help a lot of people.
And even last week, there was about 100 people at this Vipassana meditation, 50 men, 50 women. And like, I don't know for sure, but a lot of them I know didn't have any social media, even though they bizarrely found out about the course via social media or via some sort of media. And I've had so many people message me and are curious about it, wanting to learn more about meditation. And, you know, it's really started a really valuable conversation.
Yeah.
And even people who are like, oh my gosh, Sal, I could never do that. By sharing our stories, people are really able to gain wisdom about their own life.
Yeah.
And never think that people don't want to hear your story. It's another thing people will say, oh, who wants to hear my story? I'm just, you know, a boring person. Every single story, well, not every single story, everyone has a story that's going to help someone.
100%.